Good evening, visitors. Welcome to the Australian War Memorial's last post ceremony. My name is Emily Hiles, and joining us today from the Australian Army is Warrant Officer Class 1, Joanne Davey. This evening, we warmly welcome the delegation representing the United States Air Force, accompanied by members of the Royal Australian Air Force. We welcome the veterans who have served, those that are still serving, and the families that love and support them. We acknowledge the members of RSL and Services Clubs Association, RSL Victoria, and RSL Queensland, who are watching the broadcast of this ceremony across Australia. During this evening's ceremony, wreaths will be laid at the base of the pool of reflection by visitors to the memorial. If you're able, please stand and join in singing the national anthem. The Australian War Memorial was the vision of Charles Bean, Australia's First World War official historian. Bean landed with the Australian troops on Gallipoli and stayed with them at the front through to the end of the war. The idea of this national memorial and museum came to him at Pozières, France, in the depths of the bloody fighting of 1916. Bean's idea was that this would be a place where families and friends could mourn loved ones buried in faraway places. It would also be a place that could help all Australians understand what these men and women had endured and what they had done for us. Bean's vision, to which we remain true, is best expressed as inscribed to the entrance of the memorial's galleries. Here is their spirit, in the heart of the land they loved, and here we guard the record which they themselves made. Tonight, we will read the story behind just one of those on the Roll of Honour, which lists the names of more than 102,000 men and women who have given their lives for us in war and on operations for more than a century. But first, we present a lament, Flowers of the Forest. Wreaths and floral tributes will now be laid at the base of the pool of reflection.
Today we remember and pay tribute to Private Gordon Wynne Parkinson. Gordon Wynne Parkinson was born 10th of August 1892 to Samuel and Amy Parkinson of Brisbane. He grew up in Brisbane suburb of Toowong and was educated in nearby Taringa. His mother died when he was 15 years old, and his father does not seem to have remarried. Gordon went on to work as an accountant. Gordon Parkinson enlisted in the Australian Imperial Force within weeks of the outbreak of war in August 1914. He underwent a period of training in Australia before leaving Melbourne for active service overseas with the 15th Battalion on the 22nd of December 1914. Parkinson was first sent to Egypt, where he wrote an enthusiastic letter to his father saying, "I could not be any better in health. The climate is suiting me down to the sand. The 15th Battalion is acknowledged by those in authority to be the best battalion in the brigade. 3 cheers from the boys of Banana Land. We will be there when they want us." The 15th Battalion continued training in Egypt for several weeks. Parkinson described watching a drill by infantry underneath artillery fire provided by the New Zealand Artillery. He wrote, "It was the first time a lot of us had seen shells bursting as they would in actual warfare, and it was a great sight. The infantry skirmished over 2 miles of country before they readied the position they were supposed to attack, and all the time the shells were flying over the top of them. Although the outsider might say we didn't learn much, he would be wrong, as it was a great object lesson." In early April, Parkinson wrote to his father again, saying, "Each day we have been expecting to get the order to move, but nothing definite was received until today, when our officer addressed us on the parade ground, giving a very thoughtful address, telling all that we had to expect. I can tell you it was not all beer and marbles. By the way he spoke, we are not going far, and as soon as we land, our troubles will commence. We will have to fight our way ashore under cover of fire from battleships, so there will be something doing." Realising how soon this was to come, Parkinson added, "I am explaining this now, but long before you receive this letter, the action will have taken place, and the people in Australia will know all about what we have fared. We joined the force to serve our country and die for it if necessary, and Australians will be there when they are wanted. I have not thought of the consequences that may result to myself in the coming fight, but, Father, you can depend that your son will do his duty to his king and country, live or die." On the 25th of April 1915, the Australian Imperial Force landed on the beach at Anzac Cove, and as the officer had warned Private Parkinson, the men had to fight their way ashore and onto the heights above the beach through heavy enemy fire. The 15th Battalion landed later in the afternoon as part of the reinforcement to the landing parties, and was soon afterwards rushed into the forward line. 5 days after arriving on Gallipoli, the 15th Battalion reorganised, and Private Parkinson was part of a company moving from Courtney's Post to Pope's Hill. On their way, a staff officer stopped some of the men and sent them back to help some British Marines. Parkinson and 7 others were sent to occupy a forward trench. The trench they were sent to was untenable and under constant Turkish rifle and artillery fire. Only 2 of the men escaped. Private Gordon Parkinson was killed by artillery fire on the night of Friday, the 30th of April 1915 at about 8 p.m. The situation in the forward trench was so desperate that it had to be abandoned suddenly, and his body was left behind. It was not until the short armistice later in May that his mates were able to go back and recover his body, and afford him what they described as a Christian burial. A close friend of Gordon's wrote to his father to express his sympathy at Parkinson's death. He wrote, "No one has any idea of the nature of our fighting during our first 4 weeks ashore. It was hell on earth. Our own beautiful 15th Battalion suffered over 800 casualties, including 35 officers. Had Gordon been still alive, he would by now certainly have held a commission. He was a brilliant soldier, always keen, smart, and very willing, and was one of the first I should have had the pleasure to recommend for a commission. All our dearest and best pals have gone, and I find it very hard at times to try and be cheerful. Gordon was a fine lad, and as I've said before, we all thought the world of him, and his military career would have been a brilliant one." Although carefully buried by his mates during the armistice in May 1915, the battlefield grave of Private Gordon Wynne Parkinson was lost after the evacuation from Gallipoli. Today, he is commemorated on the Lone Pine Memorial, not far from where he was killed. He was 23 years old. His name is listed on the Roll of Honour on my right, amongst almost 62,000 Australians who died while serving in the First World War. A photograph of his name listed on the Lone Pine Memorial is displayed beside the pool of reflection. This is but one of the many stories of service and sacrifice told here at the Australian War Memorial. We now remember Private Gordon Wynne Parkinson, who gave his life for us, for our freedoms, and in the hope of a better world.
Please stand for the reading of the Ode and the sounding of the last post.
They shall grow not old as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun and in the morning, we will remember them.
We will remember them.
Lest we forget.
Lest we forget. We leave you this evening with the words of the memorial's founder, Charles Bean. Many a man lying out there at Pozières or in the low scrub at Gallipoli, with his poor, tired senses barely working through the fever of his brain, has thought in his last moments, well, it's over. But in Australia, they will be proud of this. Ladies and gentlemen, that concludes the last post ceremony. We thank you for visiting the Australian War Memorial today and for your continued support of the Memorials Development Project. We wish you all a very pleasant evening.